O.J. Simpson is the most consequential athlete in American history. His impact on American culture exceeds the impact of Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth, and even the great Caitlin Clark. O.J. created the cable news industry. His double murder trial defines the American criminal justice system. He is the original George Floyd, the criminal turned martyr/hero. O.J.'s opportunistic use of race as a shield to foil criminal justice is the real spark to Black Lives Matter, not Trayvon Martin. If we have a second civil war, O.J.'s acquittal verdict will be remembered as the compromise of 1995. O.J. Simpson is dead today at the age of 76. We'll talk about him, his legacy, and his impact today on Fearless. Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Thursday. Thanks for joining me. Awesome show planned for you today. Steve Kim's going to join me. First thing you can do is go to blazetv.com/fearless. Use the promo code Fearless, and you can save $20 on your yearly subscription to Blaze TV. You should do that if you support this show. Also, you should, if you're listening over Apple, you should hit that 5-star rating, leave a review. If you're watching over YouTube, hit the subscriptions, hit the likes, hit the notifications. Tell your friends to come join us each and every weekday here at 6 p.m. Central Time. Today's awesome episode, is brought to you by our good friends at Good Ranchers. Good Ranchers is locking in your price until 2026 when you subscribe to any of their boxes of 100% American meat and seafood. Use my promo code Fearless at goodranchers.com and save 10%. Support Good Ranchers. They support us. It's why we're able to do these types of tremendous shows. All right, so we all wake up this morning and, bring my guy Steve Kim up. We wake up this morning and find out that O.J. Simpson has passed away. And I was like, oh, my God, we got to talk about this with Steve Kim. We got to talk about O.J.'s legacy. Steve, welcome to the show. It's Steve. I want to start here, and it's just going to be me and you today. I can't think of anybody better. I would want to talk about the legacy of O.J. You live out in L.A. You lived in L.A. during the O.J. Simpson trial, the fallout from the O.J. Simpson trial, and just everything. You're ideal guest. You're a hardcore sports fan. I'm sure you remember O.J. as a football player to some degree, although you didn't catch the 73 season. No. Probably. No. But anyway, it's my argument that O.J.'s impact, negative impact, will go down in history as the most impact any athlete has had in any sport in American history. I'm not. You think hop right in? You think I'm crazy for saying that?
Okay. All right, Whitlock. You know what? I thought you were a little bit hyperbolic when you first started that fine monologue. But as you kind of laid it out, and it got me thinking about the impact of where we are in a supposedly post-racial America after the presidency of Barack Obama and where we are culturally and socially in America in 2024. And by the way, we are now old. I mean, I didn't realize that was decades ago now. With that said, 30. Wow. Jeez. Anyway, so here's the thing, Jason. Could you argue that O.J. Simpson was the first case of criminal justice reform? That maybe this is what really started it? I mean, just think about it. Guy commits a crime, but hey, wait a minute. You know what? He's been oppressed. You know, he sort of fits a certain profile. Boom. He gets off, at least criminally. He had to give up his Heisman Trophy later, but that's the civil case. The other thing is, but at the same time, this has many layers to it, many layers. Was he still the recipient of white privilege, given his status in society? I'm just telling you, there's a lot of ways we can go here, that even he was the brother man, he was treated like the other man, And then it also spotlighted, and this is a little bit more serious, about the divide within his own community, that he shunned his own people, but he became a symbolic figure no matter what the crime he committed, allegedly. And once he had that verdict, the celebration was on. There's a lot of ways to look at this, Whitlock.
Yeah, that celebration was, particularly in retrospect, but in real time, it was one of the most grotesque things I think we've ever seen. We saw someone who, at least from a perception-wise basis, that had rejected
his own people,
black people and black culture, and then he gets in trouble and hires Johnny Cochran to basically play the race card throughout the trial, and it works for him, and we celebrate OJ. And I want to say this, and I'm not saying this to take a pot shot at the person whose name I'm about to reference. I'm not taking a pot shot. I'm not saying it to embarrass him. I'm just telling a true story, because I don't have animus. I'm just telling a true story. But I can remember after the OJ verdict, again, this is OJ's crime happens in June of 1994. I get to Kansas City in September of 1994 working as a sports columnist. I become friends with Uncle Jimmy probably in 1998, 1999-ish, that time. But, you know, in the aftermath of OJ's not guilty verdict and blah, blah, but it became popular to wear OJ Simpson throwback jerseys. And Uncle Jimmy had one. And I'll never forget the first time seeing him in an OJ Simpson throwback jersey. And I just, you know, probably joke with him, kidding with him at the time, but it's just like, what's going on here? How this statement, this whole grift, or not grift, but this gimmick of like, hey, I want to do something to aggravate white people. Let me throw on a OJ Simpson jersey. And I'm just like, this is not appropriate nor effective. And it's just like, if you're living your life trying to do things just to troll people over a racial conflict, it's just not good. And so, I'm not saying that to take any pot shot at Uncle Jimmy. It's just a very strong, vivid memory I have. And so Here we are years later, and there's all kinds of people on social media, in real life. We just did a show this week where we talked about that movie, The American Society of Magical Negroes. The whole point was do things to make white people uncomfortable. And we've fallen into that habit. And OJ, to me, symbolizes that. And the way people wrap their arms around OJ symbolized that. But you were living in L.A. at the time. What do you remember about white people's reaction, black people's reaction, just in L.A.?
Well, I mean, look, it was very polarizing given the fact that he was a USC legend. And you have to understand, Jason, me and you are not that far apart in age. For men or individuals of our era, OJ was iconic and he was friendly. He was almost like the athletic, dashing, more handsome, taller version of Bill Cosby. He's the guy that we all knew. He hung out with Arnold Palmer. He always got to his Hertz rental car just on time as he dashed through the airport. Locally in LA, he was popular for having a Pioneer fried chicken commercial. I remember that vividly as a kid. And like you mentioned, Jason, I never actually saw him as an active football player. I believe his last year was with the San Francisco 49ers. He was very broken down in 1979. And then he moved into his role as an announcer for ABC, a personal favorite of Howard Cosell. But I do remember during the trial, I was working at an Aramark loading up boxes of magazines that weren't sold. So it was basically a factory job. And during the heated moments of that trial with Johnny Cochran and Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden and all them, I remember most of the workers were right in front of the television set in the break room watching that thing. I mean, it became a thing, specifically in LA, because of his stature. And I do want to point out for our younger members of our audience, if you want to know more about the impact of OJ and how important he was culturally, I would strongly suggest and recommend the 30 for 30 they did about 7 years ago called OJ Made in America, a 5-part series. I thought it was outstanding. I thought it captured the essence of OJ, the trial, and race in America. But when that trial finally ended and it said not guilty, I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't think there was going to be any danger. I really didn't. Number one, because after the Rodney King trial and the aftermath of that, which was about, 3 years afterwards, because that was in 1992, it was almost like they evened the score. Now, this is the interesting thing that I think about now as we discuss it. If they would have said guilty of double homicide, Jason, I do have to think about this. Would there have been another set of riots in 1995?
Probably. Not of the scale of the Rodney King deal, but there would have been some unrest, I think. Just people looking for an excuse. I mean, again, you're talking about L.A. Gang members looking for an excuse to cause chaos doesn't require much. And so, but not to the scale of the Rodney King deal, but there would have been some unrest. But what there was a shock and awe. And I'll never forget this, Steve, and I wish that people could get access to, the Kansas City Star so vindictive and they like removed all of my work from the internet. But I wrote a tremendous column after the OJ verdict because I watched the trial religiously. I was fascinated by the trial. I think I watched a good 75 to 80% of the trial with my own eyes. Because, I was really into it. And so I was at when the verdict was announced, or the day they said they had a verdict and was coming, I was telling people in advance for weeks, it's going to be not guilty. The media, the cable news networks are lying to you. They're not telling you. And this is when this whole access journalist thing really, really took off, Steve, because Marcia Clark and Chris Darden were always in conversation with Geraldo and whatever network, was that CNN at the time? I can't remember, but whatever network was covered. They were in constant communication with the media. And so the media was all into supporting the view that Marcia Clark and Chris Darden were doing a good job. And I kept going, they're getting slaughtered. This is a nightmare. They're inept. The trial went on way too long, and Johnny Cochran so outclassed them that I was just like, there's no way. The jury has no choice but to come back not guilty based on what happened in the trial. Not based on the evidence, but based on the way the trial unfolded, the way they were. Remember, they made Mark Furman and his use of the N-word a big deal. And Johnny Cochran was talking to a predominantly black jury, but there were some white people on that jury. And he was just talking to them and communicating with them in a way that they understood and connected with them. And Chris Darden and Marcia Clark just did not. Chris Darden and Marcia Clark presented the case as if the evidence was weak rather than as if the evidence was overwhelming. So I was not at all surprised by the not guilty verdict. I felt like the ineptness of the prosecution left the jury no choice. People will remember it because the media presented it that way. Oh, this is a jury that just abandoned common sense and was filled with racism, and that's why they came back not guilty. That is not the case. The prosecution was horrible, and I wrote about it at the time in real time and wrote about how, like, the media has, and I literally wrote it, that the media was lying to you, because if they had told you the truth 2, 3 months, 2 weeks into the trial, the ratings would dip. If they had spent 2 or 3 months telling you, like, man, this is going horrible for the prosecution, it's going to be a not guilty verdict, the ratings dipped. So they baited you in and kept pretending like, oh, no, the trial's going well. So that's, again, where I just say false narrative, access journalists, creating this whole cable news mushroom. OJ's impact is just enormous, Steve.
Yeah. Jason, I don't know if you watched this, but about 5-6 years ago, FX actually did like a 10-part series on that trial. And look, I was not a guy that watched it every day. I was trying to find my way through life. I was working kind of a hard job, and I didn't have time for that, what I felt was frivolity. But I did get into it. It's really interesting to me that you watched so much of it. I watched very little of it. But the documentaries around OJ and the trial, I have found to be very, very interesting in retrospect. But as I watched this series on FX, it clearly pointed out that Marcia Clark and Darden and the prosecution had major holes in the way they presented the case. There were significant errors made. And going back to the cheerleading from certain people that almost acted like this was a football game with the home team winning, I thought it was really interesting. In the ESPN doc, Made in America, there was this one leader of a black church that came out and said, well, wait a minute. Why are we cheering? Why are we cheering a man that may have committed this heinous crime? Are we doing the right thing? What does it say about us? I thought it was incredibly interesting that he was the one guy that actually said, you know, this is not a good look for anyone here. So I just have so many conflicting feelings about this now, because OJ, for a large part of my young life and as a young adult, was this incredibly popular, charismatic guy. And Jason, it's going to be interesting to see how certain pundits that are very pro-black are going to be able to talk about O.J. Simpson and about what is a very, very complicated legacy.
Very complicated legacy. If I had to predict, though, they're going to be critical. Again, O.J. was a tool that was used, and he can now be very easily tossed away. And you know, that is the pattern with the far left Marxist movement. They get their useful idiots, they use them up, and then they toss them away. And again, go ahead and replay that video that you just played. I want to make sure the audience knows what this is. These are scenes of people celebrating the not guilty verdict. And again, it's one of the most grotesque things, because, I mean, there were black, white people standing out on the street, and it came down across racial lines. Black people celebrating, white people looking with stunned amazement. And Steve, I got to think, I'm trying to think through what, and I should know better than you, but what this says and what was driving us to have this reaction to a man that murdered a woman, to a man who had distanced himself from most black people, lived off in some gated community away from black people, is this elite.
Well,
and we got this kind of love for him, or we turn him into some kind of symbol and F you to white people. It really, this to me is the moment. And I'm saying this somewhat in retrospect. White people, I think, believed it in real time. But this, to me, the OJ deal was like, this is the first time where black people were like, you know what, I'm just going to come all the way out of the closet. I hate white people. I'm racist. That's the only explanation.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, if this was a boxing match, this legal case would be Jack Johnson against Jess Willard, where the great white hope just got smacked and dominated. And that fight actually caused race riots across America. And I believe for a while it was actually illegal to show film or tape of that particular prize fight. And that was a very long time ago in American history. But, here's the thing that's interesting about that particular case and why I think that certain people felt like, hey, we got to go for our guy, even if he shunned us, even if he didn't like us, even though he looked down upon us. It has been speculated, and this is not an original thought, but because of the Rodney King trial, because of the footage of him getting beaten, right? Then the subsequent year when that whole trial went and it was taken to Simi Valley, which bothered a lot of people, and then the not guilty verdict of the officers, and then the ensuing rioting that took place. I think that right there made a lot of people feel like, you know what, even if it's OJ, we have to draw a barrier or a color line. We have to take a certain side here.
Steve, I think that's a fabulous point that I should have remembered, and I'm glad you brought it up. And so there is like this payback. But there's also like, hold on. Did you not see the riots after Rodney King? Wasn't that a payback? What you did to Reginald Denny, what you did to your own communities and neighborhoods and businesses, wasn't that a payback? And now serious. But I do think there is that. It's like, okay, y'all did a whole not guilty thing, and by y'all, a jury did a not guilty thing on the Rodney King trial, and so we're going to do a not guilty thing on OJ, and we're going to celebrate it. I'm not, Jason. I'm now delving into my memory, though. I don't think white people celebrate the Rodney King verdict?
No, I think they were hiding out. And I'll say this for the Korean community. We were all very relieved by the not guilty of OJ. We didn't have to go back on the roofs, and none of our liquor stores or dry cleaners burnt down. So I'm not going to lie to you. Maybe we were also with the juice. Maybe we were also very relieved. Maybe we celebrated the verdict. So that's interesting. Jace, I have a question. Do you remember where you were in the immediate aftermath of when you first heard about the murders that took place in that June of '94? Do you remember where you were?
Well, again, no, I'm thinking of the Bronco car chase. And the Bronco car chase was not on the day of the murder.
No. I have a story about that too.
It was not on the day of the. How many days after the murder was the Bronco car chase? Because obviously I was watching the NBA Finals during the car chase.
It was about a week or a week and a half.
Was it that long? Because it seemed like OJ was in Chicago, flew back, and I can remember him standing outside the gate of it. And I remember.
Because, Jason, the news actually broke of something happening on a Sunday night, I believe. Really? Remember, there was a couple news reports, and you're like, okay, you never thought it could be OJ. You just didn't. And I distinctly remember listening to Jim Rome. And I don't even know if he was nationally syndicated at this time. He probably was. And he basically spent the whole show talking about there's no way. And we're all thinking, yeah, there's no way. It's not OJ. Not OJ. Come on. It's the juice. Come on. Him and Arnold Palmer were probably getting their rental car. There's just no way. So you take a look at this footage right here for all our younger audience. Jason, this was, I believe, on Game 5 of the NBA Finals. Now, I was a huge, and I still remain a huge Hakeem Olajuwon fan, and I really was into that series, even though it didn't have my Lakers. So NBC still had the NBA package, and I'll never forget, this was a pivotal game. The series is tied up at 2. And I'm thinking, okay, don't worry about it. We still got home field advantage, but we're going to beat them at the Garden. And slowly but surely, the NBC coverage became, there's something going on with OJ. And then they had a little box with that car. They were thinking, okay, just keep us updated, but this is pretty important, Game 5. All of a sudden, it became, we'll get back to the game. And then they had the whole screen, and I'm thinking, hey, guys, this is Game 5 here. It's kind of important. I care about this. I may have been the only guy that cared about it because by the third quarter, the game did not matter. Nobody cared except me. And next thing you know, we had to get periodic updates on the game while watching another network. It was the most surreal day ever. And another thing I would recommend, Jason, for our younger audience, ESPN 30 for 30 also did a day coverage wrapping up everything that happened on this historic, momentous day called June 17th, 1994. And Jason, as I watched that documentary, I actually remember where I was at certain moments as they show footage. It's amazing.
Steve, I want to correct you on one thing, though, and because I think we learned about the murder Game 4. I think Game 4 was Sunday night. We hear about the murder Sunday night, and then I do know it's just 2 days later that they have the car chase. OJ comes home from Chicago. He's out in front of that gate one day, and then I think the next day they go to pick him up, and you know, he and AC Cowlings hop in the white Bronco, and they have the car chase that
Jason, don't we all need a pal like Al Cowlings?
He's ride or die.
He's literally ride or die. I remember the old joke is like, that's the most famous white Bronco since John Elway. I mean, there was all sorts of jokes there at that point in time. But I mean, this is another lesson. We all need a homie like AC Cowlings. Respect to him, man.
Steve, let me take care of a little business. I want to transition into something else, obviously OJ related, but let me take care of a little business. Are you being lied to? Wall Street tells you to put your money in an IRA or 401k. They say that risking your life savings in the Wall Street casino is a secure investment for the future. Yet studies show the average American who follows that advice will outlive their savings by 10 years. Bank on Yourself is a better way to grow and protect your hard-earned money. This retirement plan alternative has never had a losing year in over 160 years. With Bank on Yourself, your plan doesn't go backwards when the markets tumble. Your principal and growth are locked in. You'll know the minimum guaranteed value of your retirement savings on the day you plan to tap into them and at every point along the way. And you'll know what your tax rate will be in retirement, 0, under the current tax law, which protects you from the coming tax tsunami. You get access to your money for any purpose with no questions asked and without government penalties or restrictions on how much income you can take or when you can take it. Try doing that with a 401k or IRA. You can't. This is the strategy famous businesses like McDonald's have used, and almost anyone can do it. Your money is guaranteed to grow by a larger dollar amount every single year in both good times and bad. Do you want guaranteed, predictable, annual growth and control of your money and tax-free retirement income? Then go to bankonyourself.com/fearless and we'll send you a free report with the proven retirement plan alternative that banks and Wall Street are desperately hoping you never hear about. Just go to bankonyourself.com/fearless for your free report. bankonyourself.com/fearless. Steve, I want to play for people the reaction of the O.J. Simpson verdict in the actual courtroom. It's kind of fascinating because I want people to focus in on Robert Kardashian, who is the father of Kim Kardashian and Khloe Kardashian and the other, whatever. Is there another one? Anyway, there's 3 Kardashian girls. He's the father of them. Some people say OJ is the father of Khloe, by the way. But anyway, Robert Kardashian was OJ's best friend, who was a lawyer, who participated in the trial. But I want to play this video for you younger folks and just to refresh everybody's memory of what it was like in that courtroom that day and just look at the reactions.
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles. In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find the special circumstance that the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, has in this case been convicted of at least one crime of murder of the first degree and one or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true. Signed this second day of October 1995, Juror 230. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
All right, counsel, Mr. Simpson, would you be seated, please?
So Robert Kardashian was the guy directly in front of OJ. He's got the gray streak in his hair. He did not look like he was happy that his best friend got off with murder. Read into that whatever you want, but that is perhaps it's certainly the most historic moment inside of a courtroom in our lifetime. It's something people will never forget. You got another one? You got something
Well,
bigger?
Jason, I have a question for you. We all know the Dream Team, 1992 U.S. Olympic team, Magic, Bird, Jordan, Karl Malone, Stockton, right? Ewing. But are they as good as the Dream Team of F. Lee Bailey, Robert Shapiro, who, by the way, I've gotten to know a little bit. He's a big boxing fan. And Robert and Mr. Cochran? Which is the more dominant Dream Team? Which was better? It's a tough one, isn't it? Because they were both damn good. Although really? Why?
Well, I will say this. Both of them faced some very weak competition.
They did. You're right. You're right. See,
both of them faced some very...
But one of them was an underdog coming in, though. They didn't get to face Angola. I mean, you're taking on O.J. Simpson against, what looks to be insurmountable odds. They pulled an upset, though. They still pulled an upset there, Jason.
They pulled an amazing upset. And, it's Johnny Cochran is known as one of the greatest attorneys in the history of America because of this verdict. Put his name right up there alongside F. Lee Bailey, and Barry Scheck is also on that team. Who's
Scheck.
Carl Douglas? I think was the black dude, the taller black dude in the back. The Dream Team had some depth to it. I've read books by Cochran. I've read books by Robert Shapiro. I went deep. I remember Faye Resnick, Nicole's best friend. Read her book. I went deep down this rabbit hole, which makes me ask the question, Steve, are you 1,000% convinced OJ did the crimes?
Okay, first of all, I want to point this out. In a court of law, he was found innocent. I just want to make that very clear. But you're asking my opinion in Court Kim. I believe, yes, there's a preponderance of evidence that suggests he did do the crime. Yes, you're asking me that question.
Put a percentage on it. 1 to 100, put a percentage of it. How sure are you of his guilt?
99.5. What about you?
I think I'm about 90% just because I've read so much. I watched a documentary years ago that pointed the finger at OJ's son, Jason, and it was really compelling. And there was
I've heard that one.
Details. Yeah, there were some details about his relationship or maybe knowledge of Ron Goldman and his very tension-filled relationship with Nicole, and that there could have been... Maybe there was an insinuation that maybe he was infatuated with Nicole a little bit too. I remember Nicole was very young, probably closer to Jason Simpson's age than OJ's age. But the Jason, this documentary painted a picture. He was unstable, maybe a bit medicated. He was some sort of chef that would have worked with the kind of knives that ended up killing Ron and Nicole. And the argument was that OJ took the fall for his son, Jason. Now, the only reason why that only gives me a 10% shadow of doubt, I could never get over the cuts on OJ's hands and the blood drips. Now, obviously Cochran and these guys insinuated that evidence was planted. Who knows?
If it didn't fit, the isotoner sales went way up in 94, 95, by the way. Jason, you talk about the prosecution. About 4 years ago, I had the absolute torture of getting called for jury duty. Worst thing ever. So I actually got called for a trial, which is the worser thing than ever of all time. So I have to go to this trial. So I'm in this courtroom, and I look across. We're all seated, and there's this black guy. I didn't really think of who it was. Above average height, pretty well-built guy in a nice suit, looked very professional. And all of a sudden, they announced him. His name was Christopher Darden. And I was like, oh, my God, really? So here's the thing. And I'm good with Darden. I don't care how he handled the trial, because the next day, as the public defender, he cut a deal with the judge, and we were all free to go. And I said, Darden, you're good by me. We're good. All is forgiven. We're good, Darden. Good job.
What year is this?
This was like in 2019, 18 or 19, right around that time. Yeah. So
he was working as a public defender?
He was, yes, in one of these trials that we got, and I'm like, oh, God, 2 weeks of this crap, and I got to eat egg salad at the cafeteria. And the next day, they said, you're all free to go. We cut a deal. Yes. Good job, Darden. Yeah.
Wow. Maybe he's was doing a favor and it was service, but it's like if he's still doing public defender work at this point in his career, that speaks to, and again, that's what people don't understand, or people do understand, but not to the degree they need to understand. Like, the best lawyers aren't working for the DA's office. They're out in private firms, and that's why Darden and Clark were so outclassed. OJ could afford, and whoever his financial backers were could afford, and I forget.
A dream team.
A
dream team.
Wasn't, I know, but was it somebody with Hertz? It was some business associate of OJ's that paid for the dream team. I can't remember exactly who, but OJ didn't finance that. One of his benefactors financed that. And that again, is just like the disparity between the prosecution and the defense team in terms of lawyering talent was enormous. And the television networks didn't want to portray that and talk about that. But that is how they tilt the scales of justice. People that are making $80,000 a year are working against $1 million attorneys. It's Randy Moss. It's like Randy Moss playing in the Mid-American Conference. You should go look at the tape of him playing against Ball State. When Marshall was in the MAC. Again, there's just too big of a disparity. Steve, who are, in your opinion, the most influential athletes of all time?
Well, I mean, again, the way you framed it, I thought was really interesting. Here's what I came up with. And again, I know people are going to agree on some of the names, and the last couple, I think, is going to be some debate. Number one, in terms of athletic achievement and the impact he made across the world globally, I think Muhammad Ali has to be number one. I mean, he was in a time, a lot of civil and social unrest. He became a beacon of free speech. I thought he really was revolutionary. He actually did sacrifice a little bit. So he has to be number one. Number two, Michael Jordan, economically and what he's meant. And to this day, there's a mystique that's actually grown with Air Jordan. Number three, I think the first true American superstar, the Bambino, George Herman Ruth. And for the first half of this country's existence, I don't know if there were any athletic idols. I do know this. Babe Ruth was certainly a guy that most of America knew. He was actually paid more than the president. And when they asked him about it, he said, hey, buddy, I had a better year than he did. Number four, I'm going to go global. And I know you're going to kill me on this, since supposedly that game of soccer where they kicked that ball around and played it with 0-0 tie, I heard it's pretty popular. Never watched the game. I'm going to go with Pele. Pele's a guy that I knew of as a kid. And when I think of all-time great soccer players, I don't think about these other guys like Messi, Ronaldo, don't care. Pele. I like Pele, and he had that scissor kick. And so I liked him. And then number 4 and 5, again, I had a little bit of a debate. I went with Jesse Owens. Thought his impact that he made in that Olympics in Germany. And I, you know what? I'm going to tie it with Jackie Robinson. I think those two have to share it. I don't want to leave either guy out. But Jesse Owens doing that in front of Adolf Hitler, winning 4 gold medals, such an important part of American history. So don't forget Jackie Robinson, but those are my guys.
So I sent in a list. I didn't send it in a particular order, but they put it in a particular order. So I'm giving myself an excuse. But this is my top 5, excluding OJ, which I've made the argument he's the most influential, consequential athlete of all time. But let's exclude OJ for today. And so mine goes Jackie Robinson, obviously for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali for obvious reasons. Michael Jordan for obvious reasons. Babe Ruth for obvious reasons. And Caitlin Clark for obvious reasons as well.
God.
That's my...
My God. You are now... See, this is the hypocrisy. You know what? Cue Alanis Morissette. The irony is that now you're doing DIE. Or DEI. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
Caitlin Clark has a legitimate case. I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm just trolling people.
Oh, God.
But she'd probably be in my top 10, though. She'd probably be in my top 10.
Just admit it. She's actually in your top 5, and you don't want the blowback. Just keep her in your top 5, you cowards. Jeez.
You know what? There's probably some truth to that.
Yeah.
There's probably some... Steve, I want you to go first here as well. Your top 5 running backs of all time.
All right. I didn't really go in any type of order, but I think most people would say if there was a Babe Ruth of running backs and a guy that was ahead of his time, Jim Brown, I think most people have number 1. The guy I think averaged 5 yards a carry. Jim Brown was Superman. He truly was. And if he would have actually played a few more years, his records would be unbelievable. He was the easiest guy to pick. Number 2, Barry Sanders. Was spectacular. I don't think I have to say much. The most elusive running back. And we talk about wiggle and the ability to make people miss. Nobody could do it like him. The other guy that I have on my list, I got to have OJ. People do not realize how big and strong and fast he was, but he had great feet. And his highlight reel, which I've seen numerous times, various versions of it on YouTube, at his peak, he was unbelievable. And to have a 2,000-yard season in a 14-game season, 2003, and he didn't have Andre Reed or Jerry Butler out there. Okay, he was the offense, all of it. Him and the electric company up front, led by Reggie McKenzie. And I know people are loath to give him credit. Like, I see these lists where all-time great Buffalo Bills, right? And I watch these videos. They don't have OJ in it, which I find to be completely dishonest. We're not talking about citizenship. We're not passing out the Lady Bing trophy here, okay? So OJ, we can admit it, he was an all-time great football player and probably the greatest Buffalo Bill that ever was. Number 4, I'm going to admit to being biased, but I think I make a strong case. My boyhood idol, I had his poster up on the wall. He was one of 4 guys that really impacted my life as a youngster. Galloping goggles. The Sealy Cyclone, Eric Dickerson. The day he got traded, Halloween night, 1987, was the day that I grew up and I realized sports is business. He should have been an LA Ram his whole career, and he should have been the all-time leading rusher. But number 5 is the guy who is the leading rusher of all time. I know you're going to disagree. You're going to chew me out, but his longevity, his toughness, his ability to run in big games, I cannot take that away from him. I'm not saying he's as talented physically as other guys like LaDainian Tomlinson or AP, Adrian Peterson, AD actually. I got to go with Emmett. I think Emmett was the centerpiece to the triplets and 3 Super Bowl champions. So that's my 5.
You just rattled off the names of 8 running backs and never once said Walter Payton.
I know.
No.
You know what?
You named LaDainian Tomlinson. You never said Walter Payton. Walter Payton not in your top 5, or you should be embarrassed.
You know what? I am embarrassed.
You just rattled off the names of 8 running backs.
I know. Hold on. Let me redo my list. Peyton's got to be in there, but I'm not taking off Dickerson. All right, Emmett, you're out. I'm not even a Cowboy fan. Sweetness, I want to apologize to Jared Payton, fine Miami Hurricane, and his widow, Connie Payton. I want to personally apologize to all the people of Chicago. Sweetness, I want to make this clear. Get a new graphic, edit that out. Sweetness is in my top 5. You're right, Jason. I can admit when I'm wrong once a decade.
So the correct list is mine: Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, Walter Payton, O.J. Simpson, and Eric Dickerson. And,
wait a minute. So we agree on 4 out of 5, Jason. Get out of here with this.
Well, again, I'm going to give you another name. Let me give you another name you never mentioned, who would be my number 6, Earl Campbell. If
Earl at his peak was incredible. Greatest big back that can run through people. And again, maybe we're going by peak, but man, he had a great 4 years and then he fell off quickly with that style. But yes, he was a physical, bruising running back. Marshall Faulk has to be given credit. And I think the most underrated running back in NFL history, Jason, I don't know if you're going to agree with me or not, because he could never get that ring. But I think he's actually the prototype for the modern running back today, Thurman Thomas. People forget how good he was. And before there was Marshall Faulk catching passes and running routes, there was the Thurminator out of Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Good list. I'm not done with you on OJ, or good mention of Thurman Thomas. Not done, but I want to take care of our great friends at Good Ranchers. Tired of your favorite cut of beef or chicken costing more and weighing less every time you buy it? I've got a sizzling solution for you. Good Ranchers. Price Lock Guarantee. This is the only price lock on 100% American meat you can find, and you don't want to miss it. During their April Price Shield campaign, Good Ranchers is locking in your price until 2026 when you subscribe to any one of their boxes full of 100% American meat and seafood that they ship right to your door. Good Ranchers is where I get 100% American meat I can trust that's tender and full of flavor every time. With meat prices continuing to go up and quality at the store going down, Good Ranchers Price Shield will not only save you hundreds, but also help you put 100% American beef, chicken, pork, and wild-caught seafood on your plates that you can trust. Plus, get an extra 10% off with your subscription with my promo code FEARLESS at goodranchers.com today. What I really love about Good Ranchers, their commitment to transparency. They believe that you have the right to know what's exactly in your food. They're amazing supporters of this show, so go support them and take the mystery out of all the meats you buy. The exclusive Price Shield offer ends at the end of April. So if you want to secure your best price on meat until 2026, go to goodranchers.com, use my promo code FEARLESS for 10% off your subscription, free express shipping, and a nice price lock guarantee until 2026. Goodranchers.com, American meat delivered. Steve, I just want to circle back one last time. OJ was having a bit of a renaissance here of late. Wasn't he on Cameron and Mace's show or something like that?
Yes.
He was on someone's show, and I don't know if you remember this when we brought Marshall Faulk and Brian Urlacher and Warren Sapp and Brett Favre into town for a cookout. Marshall Faulk said they were going to bring OJ back to the Hall of Fame inductions. The Pro Football in Canton, they were going to bring him back this year coming up. OJ was working his way back into a little bit. You know, obviously the guy was as famous as you could be and at the top of the sports media world, but he was working his way back up the ladder of some relevancy where he could bring his head out without getting hit with tomato cans or tomatoes or whatever. For a lot of people, I think 40 and under, maybe they know more about OJ and he had a popular Twitter feed. Didn't he have like 850,000 followers? There were some people that found OJ amusing and maybe even a tiny bit endearing. You agree, or what should we make of that?
Jason, I always found it, I don't want to say amazing, but I did admire the fact that every time he posted something, specifically his videos, he was always in a good mood. He was always in a great mood. Nothing bothered him. You know, the sun is shining. You know, I'm going to play 18 holes of golf. You know, the Glacier Glider ladies still like the old juice. You know, shout out to Hawk Nation. And I'd always do two things, Jason. I don't know about you, but every time Mr. Simpson came on my Twitter feed somehow, I'd number one, retweet it because I knew it'd get a reaction. And number two, I'd go read the comments below. And man, Yeah, Jason, he got some cyber tomatoes and rotten fruit thrown at him. Let's just be honest. But the fact he didn't care, he just lived his life. And you could argue that, man, this guy's a sociopath after what he may have done, allegedly, to actually function and have a good time and not be down or sour about his situation. I think that angered people. But also, we are a very forgiving society. And I want to make a serious point here. Maybe it is alarming that as an American culture that our worship of celebrity or fame is so strong that we are willing to forgive and forget almost anything if you have a certain amount of fame, that it almost becomes like this currency that'll always make sure that we're not bankrupt in terms of fame and popularity and opportunities. I mean, we left this out, Jason. Years after the trial, he went back to jail for basically, I don't want to say stealing his own memorabilia, but there was this robbery case involving a collector. He went back to the room and he jacked him. And he actually served several years. I mean, that's a part of his story also. And then coming out of it, there seems to be a popular sentiment that, hey, OJ did it. It's a long time ago. He's funny. He makes viral moments. You know what? Let's let him back into the circle. I don't know what that says about our culture currently, Jason.
Let's watch. This is a video that drew a lot of attention when OJ talked about opening up to a woman.
Said men shouldn't open up to women because they'll use it against them. He said whenever something go down, they're going to throw it back in your face. Do y'all agree? OJ first.
OJ first.
When you say open up to women, I don't know what he's talking about. Is he talking about confessing? No, man, don't confess. No, I think you're right. Don't say nothing. It was your lying eyes.
Yeah.
So leave me out of the confession.
Yeah. Oh, no confession. Yeah.
No, you gotta leave me out of this.
All these episodes. Yeah, I won't say that. No confession.
Come on.
Oh my goodness. Yo, on Killer Birthday. This is classic.
Swine.
Yeah, the blue wine. But it's the blueberry juice that kicked in.
Oh shit!
Oh, said don't tell her nothing.
I got mixed. What? Yucking it up with OJ, talking about women and don't confess to it. I mean,
Uncle OJ's just trying to teach the youngins. He's trying to be a mentor. Come on, boy. And this got cut off suddenly today. God.
It wasn't me. I mean, it's just like, remember he had the book, If I Did It?
If I Did It, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just, the mother of your children dies. Let's say you didn't do it. She still died. Her kids are out here. You're on camera somewhere yucking it up about not confessing. There's just something wrong with us.
Jason,
last thing I want to go ahead.
So Jason, you're just saying that OJ just should have stuck to giving fantasy football advice. I think there is an argument for it. Yeah, but OJ's got a lot to say. There's a lot of squeeze out of that juice. Come on, Jason. Jeez.
This is one of his last videos where he talked about his health and he gave his Super Bowl picks. Let's play that.
Hey, X-World, it's me, yours truly. Boy, what a beautiful day it is here in Las Vegas. Even though the game is indoors, it wouldn't have mattered, but still, it's nice to have a beautiful day like this. Hey, let me take a moment to say thank you to all the people who've reached out to me. My health is good. I mean, obviously I'm dealing with some issues, but hey, I think I'm just about over it, and I'll be back on that golf course hopefully in a couple of weeks. But it was very nice hearing from you and hearing those good, positive words. Thank you. Now, as far as the game goes, obviously, my prediction, and it's not hope, I'm basing it on who's on the field. I see a 24-20 win by the 49ers. And that, as I said, that's not hope. I'm basing that on the quality of the players that are on the football field. So who's going to be MVP? Purdy or McCaffrey. Of course, if KC wins, it'll probably be Mahomes. But I'm predicting number 19. And I'm not talking about Johnny Unitas. In any event, well, we got a few more hours and we'll know. Please, I hope you with friends, the ones who are not going to the game. And hey, it should be a great game because all the great players that are involved. Hey, God bless, take care, and I hope your team win if that your team is the 49ers. God bless, take care.
So obviously OJ grew up in San Francisco, final season with the San Francisco 49ers. Makes sense that he would pick the 49ers to win. I think he's predicting Deebo Samuels there as MVP. None of that came true. But anyway, OJ, not a complicated legacy in my view, in terms of like, this is not a good guy. And people's reaction to him, I think, is very complicated. And how people will remember him and how people reacted in real time to the trials and tribulations, the ups and downs of OJ's life. I think, again, people got their revenge on OJ for what you talked about, the events in Las Vegas, where I think he ended up spending did he spend 7 years in prison? For a bogus crime, really. I think it was kind of made up kind of crime, and the judge certainly, sentenced him for a long time for something that really didn't deserve that. So people got their revenge, and OJ's I don't care whether he was out of jail or in jail, the last 30 years of his life had to be miserable. Had to be. I don't care what drugs they gave him or what drugs he took to try to not remember what he was involved in or whatever. I will say, rest in peace to OJ. Hopefully he made some peace with God before passing. But anyway, Steve, thank you for helping me talk about OJ Simpson today. Great job as always. Hey guys, if you want to hear me and Steve Kim talk about the latest news on Bronny James, an NBA general manager, has come out and said that no way Bronny James is qualified to be in the 2024 draft. Steve and I are going to talk about it. You need to be a Blaze TV subscriber. This conversation will only be available to our Blaze TV subscribers. Join us at Blaze TV. Go to blazetv.com/fearless, become a subscriber, and you can hear Steve and I with some extra content only for subscribers. Having said that, that's it and that's all for today. Play tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, no deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I wanna